Let's go ahead and get started. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. Let me start out by introducing our leadership team. This chart illustrates the team members, our roles and responsibilities. I am Bonnie O'Regan, and I have been the ALP facilitator since 2012. Myself, Dr. Benjamin Marcus in ELA, Mr. Mike Reed, who's joining us tonight from math, and Mrs. Tara Fogel in science work collaboratively. As an ALP leadership team, our primary goal is to maintain multiple effective lines of communication with all stakeholders. Please take note that when you communicate with one of us, then you communicate with all of us. During this session, I will be answering the three most frequently asked questions. What is the placement process for ALP? Are there sample test questions? And when will the students take the test? And when will the parents find out if their child is placed? Before we get started into the placement process, let's start with what is the Advanced Learning Program, better known as ALP. In the Greenwich Public Schools, it is our policy to provide a comprehensive educational program for all students. The Advanced Learning Program uses a content replacement and acceleration programming model for students who give evidence of significantly high performance capabilities. For the 22-23 school year, next school year, identified students in grades 3, 4, and 5 will meet daily in the ALP classroom in lieu of the general ed classrooms to receive their instruction in reading, math, and science. Greenwich uses a three-phase placement process to identify specific academic student needs and match learners with the appropriate education. This graphic shows the full process: referral, assessment, and placement. It looks a little overwhelming at first, so let's break it down. The referral phase. This is the direct procedure that enters a student into the evaluation phase. Sorry, my papers. The referral process is broken down into three tiers. In Tier 1, students are first flagged as potentially needing advanced program by a review of academic performance. We call this their body of evidence. It includes assessments given at the district level. In Tier 2, teachers add to this body of evidence by looking at the assessments given in the class and refer students then. In Tier 3, parents are invited to add even more information to this body of evidence. They can also opt to refer their child. The referral input form is emailed to all parents in grades 2, 3, and 4, and can also be found on the district ALP website. On the parent input form, parents are asked to rate the frequency of observations on 5 behavioral characteristics and provide examples. A bit more about these questions. The questions are based off of the gifted behaviors continuum. This continuum compiles information on traits in 4 categories: cognitive, creative, affective, and behavioral. The markers on these forms are among the many used in the identification process. All students, no matter which tier they're referred through, will complete a battery of secondary assessments to determine aptitude and ability within the evaluation phase. In the evaluation phase, students take assessments which provide a multitude of information that has not already been already gathered within that body of evidence. Depending upon the academic referral area, students may take between 3 and 8 assessments. There is a CogAT, which is age normed. This assessment evaluates relationships, systems thinking, and cognitive ability. Students also take an NWEA MAP test. This is grade level normed and assesses both content and concepts. This assessment is adaptive, giving students questions at and above grade level. The final assessments are performance assessments. These are district level normed, open-ended responses that dig into application and reasoning. Now, let's take some time to look at what each of these assessments look like. The first type of assessment is an ability test. The ability test we use is a cognitive abilities test, better known as the CogAT. The CogAT is a test of reasoning skills. It is not like a spelling or math test where if you know the words or facts, you can get a 100%. There is no defined curriculum for the CogAT. In the verbal battery, students are presented with 20 to 24 questions at a time and given a set amount of time to complete each of the subtests. In verbal analogies, students examine a pair of words and think of ways in which they are related. Then they apply this relationship to a third word to generate a pair of words related to each other in the same way as the first pair. In sentence completion, students read an incomplete sentence, then select the answer choice that best completes the sentence. In verbal classification, students examine 3 words and think of the ways which they are alike. They then select the answer choice that belongs in the same group. In the quantitative battery, the test questions require the same processes as the verbal analogies tests, or the verbal tests, but use quantitative concepts instead rather than the verbal concepts. The 3 subtests are between 16 and 18 questions each and to be answered within a set amount of time. In number analogies, students examine 2 pairs of numbers and determine the rule that both pairs follow. Then they apply the rule to a given number and choose the answer that generates a third pair of numbers that follows the same rule. In number puzzles, each question presents an equation in which elements are missing. The students must substitute numbers for the missing elements and solve the equation. In number series, each question contains a series of numbers that follows a pattern. First, students identify the rule the numbers follow, then apply the rule to find the next number in the series. The second type of assessment given is an achievement assessment, which measures what students know and what they are ready to learn next. The NWA MAP growth assessments have replaced the use of the star as our achievement assessment. The NWEA MAP assessment is a computer adaptive test. If your child answers a question correctly, the next question is more challenging. If they answer incorrectly, the next one is easier, adapting so students are answering questions correctly approximately 50% of the time. This type of assessment challenges our top performers without overwhelming students whose skills are at or below grade levels. Now let's look at what some of these types of questions that students may see within the MAP. The reading assessment tests students' understanding of specific reading concepts in both literary and informational text. To assess students' knowledge within key ideas and details, students read and comprehend text, making inferences and predictions and draw conclusions. Students are also asked to analyze the structure of literary and informational text and evaluate the author's craft and purpose. Finally, students are asked to use context clues and reference materials to decipher word meanings and nuances. In math, the students are assessed in their specific math concepts. Within operations and algebraic thinking, students represent and solve problems involving all 4 operations. Here are samples of questions assessing the student's knowledge within measurement and data. Note that students are asked to select correct answers, but not all questions are multiple choice. Some require a constructed response. The NWEA Science Assessment assesses students' understanding of life sciences, physical sciences, and earth and space sciences. For more sample test questions, you may go online at this address. This is not an actual test or representative of the content of the assessment. It just shows sample question types. The last type of assessment we use are performance assessments. Whereas the CogAT helps answer the question, how well are you reasoning? And MAP answers the question, do you know it? Performance assessments help answer the question, how well can you use your reasoning and what you know to generate knowledge? I'm sure you noticed that the questions within the CogAT and the NWA MAP were either multiple choice or asked students to construct a specific answer in a specific way. Unlike the CogAT and MAP, a performance assessment requires the students to perform a task or generate their own responses. In language arts performance assessment, students are asked to read a short piece of literature and respond to 4 open-ended questions. For sample purposes, let's use the text of the book Horton Hears a Who. Given this story is longer than typical for the actual assessment, the literature selected for the actual assessment is written at grade level and can be read by students within approximately 5 minutes. After reading the story, the students are then asked questions about what they have just read. The most important component of each question is that the students are using evidence to support their answer. The students' responses are then scored on their demonstrated ability to analyze and interpret the text. For instance, in response to the question about the quote from the story, a student who provides no evidence of understanding and makes no interpretations would say, well, kids are people too. A response stating that the quote has nothing to do with height conveys a superficial interpretation of the text. But by expanding on this idea that size doesn't matter and that humanity does, the students go beyond that literal level and show an interpretation of the text. Math performance tasks encourage students to think beyond applying their basic skills by solving math problems that lend themselves to more than one way of solving. I have 3 sample questions here. None of the questions require students to use any math concept that's not previously been taught at their grade level. In this sample, students are asked to apply their understanding of multi-digit addition and answer the question about the digits. Some questions require students to use their logical thinking skills, and yet others, in this question written for 4th graders, students apply not only that logic, but also their multiplication skill concepts. Upon completion of all of these assessments, we move into the placement phase. Students' tests are scored, and these scores are further analyzed. A z-score is calculated for each assessment, and then the 3 z-scores are averaged. What is a z-score, you ask? This statistical calculation explains how a student performs in relation to the class, school, and district average. Once this is done, a full school score profile is created for every identified student. These score profiles are reviewed by a group of teachers, administrators, and members of the ALP leadership team at what we call a building advisory committee. This team conducts a comprehensive review of each child's record and performance using the objective test data performance and that subjective input from parents and teacher forms. All selection decisions reflect our best professional judgment of that committee to determine how the best way is to meet each child's individual needs. Generally, students are recommended to ALP if their average z-score places them within the top 10% of district achievement or in the top 10% of their building achievement. So there you have it, the entire placement process. Now note, the development of gifts and talents are dynamic and constantly developing. Therefore, the placement process extends from 2nd through 8th grade. Opportunities are provided to be considered for placement in ALP classes throughout a student's school experience. Now on to important dates. There are 3 dates that are important to know. The first one is this parent referral and input form. Parent input is a valuable component to our placement process. Please complete this form by March 23rd. The second date is actually a range of dates. All the students will take the assessments between April 4th and May 13th. Yes, this is a large window, but it includes time off for spring break and some cushion. So if your child's not feeling well on any of the scheduled dates, makeup tests can be given within the window. The building specific dates will be emailed to you on April 1st. The last date is when you will be informed of the committee's placement recommendation. Emails will be sent starting on Thursday, June 9th. May take me now until June 10th also. Included in this email will be the scores from all of the assessments your child took and an invitation to another webinar in which we will be talking more specifically about the scores and how they were interpreted. I'd like to once again thank you for your attention and extend an invitation to ask questions at this time. I see there's some here coming in. If you have any questions at this time or have specific questions about your child's, please don't hesitate to email us. Please take note, if you are emailing one of us, you are indeed emailing all of us. Let me answer some questions here. First question, my child has taken the CogAT test in the past 18 months. Will they have the opportunity to take it again? If the student has taken the assessment, the second graders who took the assessment this fall will not need to take it again, but any students who took it last year will have the opportunity to to take um, to take it this year. I think that answers the second question here. Um, Um, oh, this was another question is that you filled out a parent referral and input form in November, December. You do not need to do it again. Just the form is exactly the same as what it was. The only difference between the form that you filled out in November, December, and this one is the addition of the tick off mark for science. Science was not included in that because we do not offer ALP level science at in second grade. The ALP cutoffs, are they based for each school or normalized for the district? Actually, both. If the student is scoring within the top 10% within the district, or they may also be in the top 10% in the building. Um, Yes, yes, we are doing within. I mentioned the reading advanced. I'm using reading as far as reading and writing will be connected next year. This year, the third, fourth, and fifth graders also did social studies within that block. That is no long. The social studies will be done with their homeroom teachers next year, and in the advanced learning program block, they will be doing reading and writing because those are so interconnected. Oh, the sample questions. Yes. Actually, if you just Google map samples, it'll send you to this NWEA samples here. It will also, if you Google it up, NWEA map sample, it will send you to this. The username and the password are case sensitive in this case, where you have to use the lowercase g's on those. Oh, the email that I stated would that you would get the schedule for the test on or below um, March 30th. I'm planning on sending it out by March 30th, but I put April 1st on here also, just to give me a little bit more wiggle room as far as the number of emails that I can send out with our email server is 1,500 a day. And so sometimes it takes a little bit longer for me to get all of those out. Um, the link for the sample questions, this presentation will be posted up onto the website um probably tomorrow, along with the recording of this presentation, and so you're free to download any of this information at that point in time. um, the informational session for the middle school out, we already had that back in, Mike, do you remember when we did that? We did that right in January. Wasn't that beginning of January that we did? And that has been posted. The the scores and the placement recommendations for those are also going out April 1st, hence my 1,500 limit, and I'll be juggling my 1,500 emails per day on that. And remember, anytime you have a question, you can always email, and I'm happy to talk with you individually. Um, I the percentile, we're not using the percentiles. I look at the average Z scores, and the average Z scores are if they're in the top 10% in the district or in the top 10% of the building. Generally, these are within the 90, nationally at the 98th percentile or above, but I cannot say that that's, I can't say that it definitively. Um, um, First grader does not need to apply for ALP because when they get into second grade, they're already going to be part of the second grade. The ALP program starts in second grade, and all students will participate in that. So we don't need to do any assessments with first graders at this point in time. Yes, science will have a separate NWEA map test, which it will be looking at the concepts within the science concepts for that. Um, if student does not speak English, then I work with the ELL support staff on what needs translated and to make sure that those students are able to access the content, especially when it comes to those word problems. For our math performance task, if we need to do a translation on those, we do that for those students. But I work directly with the ELL specialist for those. The best way to prepare a child for any of the ALP tests is to get a good night's sleep. Help them not stress about it. The things that they need to know, they're learning in school. It's the curiosity. Um, Mike, do you want to what's been your experience with this also?
Yeah, so being a former second grade teacher, I got that question quite often. How do we prepare our students to get into ALP? And you know, to Bonnie's point, the most important thing is to keep the stress level low, right? It's not about prepping them or overemphasizing certain content or things like that. We want them to get into the program when they're actually ready to be in there. And so sort of teaching to the test would not be the right way to do it. All that really does, from my experience, is create anxiety. So the best way to help them prepare for any of these assessments is to Bonnie's point, get a good night's rest, and just relieve all the stress from it whatsoever. Just sort of let the process unfold the way that it does.
Someone asked about the presentation being emailed. No, I will not be emailing that out to individuals unless you specifically are having trouble navigating towards where it lands on the website. Mrs. Fogel helps manage our website, and she will get that posted as soon as possible. Expect it. It can be probably tomorrow afternoon. Well, we should be able to get both of them up, or the next day. For the ALP science, what we will do is we have the NWEA map assessment that assesses the concepts within science, but then we also use the verbal quantitative composite for the CogAT, which the students who were in second grade already took both components. So if a student is testing for ALP science, they will have the CogAT verbal and quantitative composite that they will take, and then they will also have an NWEA map assessment. The ALP program introduces a higher than grade level. Yes, the part of the NWA map is that it adapts, and it will adapt well above grade level. As I was watching the fifth graders just taking it recently, it will adapt all the way through high school level work. And especially if the students are getting the questions correct, it's going to adapt until they're getting approximately 50% of them wrong, or it will adapt down until they get 50% right. So it adjusts. Typical number of students per grade. Um, we run right around 10, 12% by the time it like 10%. Um, it's around 10. Yeah, we keep 10%. Or it'll go up to 10% because if a student is in the top 10% of the district and that there happen to be more than 10% of the students in that building that are in the top 10% of the building in in the district. I'm fumbling my words here. If a student's in the top 10% of the district and they happen to be at a school that has 40 students in their class, but there are 6 kids that are in the top 10% of the district, we don't cut it off and say, oh, only 4 kids can go in, all 6 kids. And so you may end up with more than 10% in some buildings. But and again, it's amount of those number of students. If there's more students that need the programming outside the regular classroom, we find another chair. There's no cap. When you are doing this practice test, you can try all the different grade levels, but I believe that they're all the same questions because it's about the question types. It's not about the content. So most of the questions are whether when I've gone in and looked at the third grade ones and looked at the fourth grade ones, the questions are identical. What grade does the ALP program end? When you graduate? It starts. We've been Mike and I were just talking about the programming that for the high school. Um, is to it transitions, and so it's no longer called the ALP. It's no longer called ALP, but we offer higher level classes all the way through high school. Can a student be accepted into math and not reading, or vice versa? Yes. You can be in ALP math, you can be in ALP reading, or you can be in math science, or any combination thereof. The math and science this year were connected, and next year they are separated again. So you can be in science only, you could be in math only, you could be in reading only, or any combination. The exact dates will be communicated, but not the exact test, because of that some of the assessments are given and rely upon our internet, and some of them are paper pencil. And so you never know when we may need to pivot from one type of an assessment to another because of other factors that are going on, or if there's a time, the different assessments also require a different amount of time. So we do not tell you which assessment. You will know which days they're going to be doing math and which days they're going to be doing reading, but you will not know exactly which days they're taking which assessment. What's the approach for very young kids who consistently perform at above grade level but have trouble mastering the test specific techniques? The students are being tutored. The most important thing for the students to know, and these are for when you're doing the assessment, is to read carefully, and that is emphasized by each one of the proctors the proctors are the ALP leadership team. All 4 of us will be doing all of the giving of all of the assessments, and as we give the assessments, we do highlight that they need to be looking at the test questions, especially on the NWEA. The NWEA, sometimes they'll ask for more than one response. And noting that you're going to need to do that. On the NWEA is untimed. You may only go forward, you may not go back. So that should take their time and move, and because you can't go back and review your answers. Whereas on the other ones you can. Um, in the email, when we find out if the child has been referred by the school before the deadline for parent submissions, in the email that you received from me on Friday or Saturday, I put in the if the child was referred within tier 1 or tier 2, it says that they were being recommended to test for whatever subject or subjects. So everyone has that information already. If your child is in third grade, be looking at third grade practice, fourth grade. For the NWEA, it's not going to matter because it's question types. It's not about the content at all. Do students need to be in this program to join AP classes in high school? No, no, not at all. In fact, you don't even need to be in the ALP program in elementary to join the highest level classes in middle school. It's all about developmentally where the student is at that point in time, and is this the best um, um, is this the best appropriate education for them at this point in time? Yeah, the NWA evaluates students above grade level. That means evaluated on things they haven't already seen. Is this correct? Yes, it is. These are above level assessments that the students, what we have is from the teachers, we know how the students are doing on the things that they have been directly taught. What we want to do is look at this and say, well, there's a lot of knowledge that kids have that have not been directly taught. And what we want to do is find that limit of what do they already know and what are they capable of doing. If my child gets into an ALP after an initial intake, what tools are given to catch up in math? You Depending, especially if you're going into, it depends on the grade level, but this is part of the assessment. The assessment will tell us exactly if there's any gaps that we will need to be supplementing in the class, and the help teachers will be able to be ready for that when they arrive in the fall. You do not need to do any summer work in order to get ready for ALP, except for to get muddy and have fun. Enjoy camp. That's my last question that I have. Does anyone else have any questions? In my email, it did not provide any tier 1 information. Can I request this by emailing individually? Yes, email me and I will email you back. You will hear from us within one school day. If you email me on Saturday, you won't hear from me until Monday. But you email me on Monday, I will try to get to you by Monday evening, by Monday before I leave, or Tuesday first thing. Mike, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Anything I left out?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward. I mean, the real big takeaway from this is try to keep the stress level low for your child, and know that we are ready to answer any questions you have. So don't let anything simmer or get you frustrated. Just shoot an email over to us. Bonnie will pull that that
I'm
email
pulling it.
link right now. It's our advanced learning email, and just, ask the question. We get a lot of questions, and sometimes it's a quick answer. Sometimes it necessitates a phone call. We'll do our best to get back to you in, like Bonnie said, in 24 hours. And but yeah, it's a very interesting process that we go through. It's pretty intense. As Bonnie told you, the four of us are running around the district like crazy people, in all sorts of buildings. And the students, we learn a lot about how the students handle the stressors of testing like this. And sometimes they don't get in on the first try. Sometimes it takes a few tries. But just know that we all develop at different rates. And so some of us grow 5 inches in a year, and some of us grow 1 inch a year. That's the best sort of metaphor that I can give you to understand how this process works. But the last thing I'll say, to reiterate what Bonnie said, you do not need to be an ALP in elementary school to get into any of the highest level courses in middle school. And you certainly don't need to be an ALP in elementary school to get into the highest of courses at the high school. Just don't look at it as a barrier to entry for anything super high later on down the educational career. Everybody gets to where they need to be. So I guess I would end on that note.
There was a question about on the practice test as to which one we're doing math, the growth. So you want the math growth or the reading growth. You don't need to do the accessible or the protractor and ruler. Just the growth one is all that you need. Thank you all for joining us.